the Ad Podcast. We've got a super exciting guest to kick off the week for you guys. Tara Oporto is known as is the founder and CEO of Enchantra Inc., a New York City-based, New Jersey-based modern brand house. C-Corp focused on creating innovative lifestyle and wellness brands. A longtime marketing leader and mom of 5, she founded Temperates, Temperates.com. In 2025, an intentional non-alcoholic beverage brand and lifestyle marketing platform exploring the new culture of drinking less. Temperates examine how alcohol marketing, identity, habits, and biology influence consumption while promoting clarity, connection, and wellness without labels of pressure. It's positioned for the sober curious movement with insights on Gen Z prioritizing recovery, performance, and meaningful social rituals over traditional drinking. Her expertise spans growth strategy and media partnerships as a past advisor for Premier Direct Response and rethinking health culture intersections. She's been featured in outlets like Muscle and Fitness discussing alternative beverages and the fitness industry's role in the sober curious trends. She went to George Washington University and is based in New Jersey metropolitan area. And you can find her at the LinkedIn handle TaraOporto. Tara, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This is fantastic.
Let's go. Well, I'm excited about this interview. I was excited to reach out to you originally, and I loved our pre-show, kind of getting into what we're going to talk about today. But some of the audience knows this. I have written about it on publications like Campaign. Being a media sales executive in a particular boozy industry as the advertising space, they made a movie or they made a TV show called Mad Men, and it was interesting for a reason, right?
Yeah, I loved Mad Men. I mean, who doesn't love Mad Men, right?
I loved it. I loved it too. And to be quite frank, to be quite honest with you, I found myself having 3 martini lunches a lot more back then after watching Mad Men. It almost gave me an excuse.
We might have to have a talk with John Hamm, because if you watch Landman, he's drinking the same rocks glass in Landman that you'll catch him in Mad Men drinking.
I know. Yeah. He plays that character well, sadly.
Yes, he does.
But so I've written about this topic as well because I've been sober for 11 years. And, my biggest struggle with giving up alcohol was actually the advertising industry. I found it, I was completely convinced that I couldn't do my job as a sober person. And then when I met the CRO of Facebook, who had been sober for 30 years, it kind of slashed and destroyed my final excuse. So, I talked a little bit about your background, and I want to get into the backstory because I think that's always the more interesting part. Tell me about, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And how did you get into, this idea of like launching brands? And I know like all the brands that you've launched have a very important backstory that is basically tied to, your development as a human being. So I love that. And I want to hear more about it.
Sure. I'm working on a lot of brands right now. Temperates is really important to me. And I kind of fell into it. I wasn't, setting out to be in the space of non-alcoholic beverage. And just to clarify, I don't have my own non-alcoholic beverage. Mm-hmm. My brand is really more about content because I also come from the media and marketing industry. And before I had any awareness of what kind of impact alcohol was really having on me, I worked on alcohol brands twice. So, I worked for Sauza Commemorativo back in college as a shot girl. I mean, I was out there, and this is in my book, but I was out there in bars getting everybody to do tequila shots with 7-Eleven and just, 7-Up, and having poppers. Like, it was a very, very exciting time. And then in the media industry, I also worked on a bourbon brand and did some out of home. So when I kind of stumbled into this in 2023, when I got educated on what the research had now shown about how really everything that we've been told is not true about how great alcohol is for us, I felt, and this was kind of subconscious, but I felt like I have to do something about this. Here I am for 3 decades believing that alcohol, red wine's great for me, good for my heart, that it's better in moderation than not at all. And listening to all of these brands and marketing messages telling me how good it is, and listening to the media outlets write stories about how good it is. There was an article circulating, I guess it's about 10 years ago, saying that 1 glass of red wine was the equivalent to 1 hour in the gym. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm just gonna drink wine and I'm, like, working out every day." And I felt, when my eyes got open to this, I felt really, like, angry. I'm
Mm.
the mom of 5, and 4 of them are going to be turning 21 within the next few years. I have step Irish triplets and a daughter 1 year younger than those 3 boys. So, all 4
Wow.
of them, they're almost quads, are going to be 21 soon. And they're coming into this with the same messages about how drinking 4 Coronas is taking them to the beach and, all of these things that we've been bombarded with for decades, but we know better now. We know that that's not true. We know that it's tied to 7 cancers. We know what
Mm.
those cancers are. And, we were talking about earlier, Grok, all of these AI agents, all of everything you can find in 2 seconds now, it just takes a little bit of digging to realize that this really isn't good for us. So, I became really passionate about it and couldn't stop myself from talking about it. My husband is a car enthusiast, so we would go to car shows. This again started a few years ago, and I would be like sitting there with my Yeti of like hop waters and partakes, and I would want to go stand out in the middle of the aisle and talk to everybody walking by about why they should taste these non-alcoholic beverages. And I'm like, I'm not a vendor. I have no vendor permit. I need to control myself. But like I said earlier, I'm coming from when I was younger, talking to strangers about drinks, right? I was telling them to do these tequila poppers, and now I'm like, I have to now fix that. I have to go tell them to drink
You have to
non-alcoholic beers
atone.
instead. So I'm not sure if I just went off too much off of your original question, but my background, I grew up in Queens. Grew up in a house that did not really have alcohol. My parents were not drinkers, but my friends were, the teenagers were. And there's a lot in my book about my background and growing up and how alcohol got introduced into my life. And I think we all have our stories, and we, especially the Gen Xers, grew up really believing that alcohol was totally fine. Like I said, the messaging was if you drink in moderation, it's totally harmless and really can be good in certain ways. So we have to re-educate everybody now, and it's really hard to be willing to step into that space for both the person who wants to do it and all of their friends and family, because if the friends and family aren't doing that either, then there's this friction because nobody wants to open that door for themselves and say, wait, should I also not be drinking? Because nobody wants to lose that fun. And,
Mm.
it's how we are defining what these drinks mean that is controlling whether or not we're willing to even look at this. But there's this whole new space of the middle. Like it used to be either you didn't drink for some reason, right? Like you either didn't like the taste or you had some reason like an alcohol use disorder, or you were pregnant, or you were on some kind of medication. But there had to be some societal, accepted reason for why. Or you had that, or you had alcohol use disorder, right? I know I said
Mm.
that in the first part, but I meant the two different things. So you have either alcohol use disorder or you have all of the other acceptable reasons. But then if you're in the middle, there really isn't one. It's like, well, why wouldn't you drink? And now it's like, well, you wouldn't drink because it's actually terrible, even in moderation. But
Mm.
that messaging is not out there. I mean, I saw an article recently that was still talking about the health benefits. So it's just it's really a problem. And I'm hoping that my voice can help get people to at least be aware, because I've found that there's a lot of people in this space right now, which is very exciting. And a lot of them are about 100% sobriety. And Temperates isn't really about that. It's just about really being fully educated and aware and then choosing what you want for yourself. Because I'm not 100% not drinking, but it's really only down to what the Huberman podcast recommends at this point, which is like 2 drinks a month, right?
Mm.
Because it's just so bad for us. And every time I think about, do I want this drink now that I've been doing this for 3 years? It's like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I love that. I think about kind of the days of big tobacco, right? Like that
Right.
was kind of the heyday of the advertising industry.
Hmm.
And eventually there were massive regulation put in place on what could and couldn't be talked about as it pertains to tobacco. And that's still true with nicotine products, and it's true with legal cannabis products.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are heading to the big tobacco moment with alcohol, where at some point, the science is going to net out and it's going to be kind of brought to light, where it's like, hey, look, like, everybody has their vices,
Mhm.
things are okay in moderation, but we need to be really honest about, the effects even as a casual users.
I hope that we're going in that direction. I was a little discouraged when they went the opposite way and just said drink less and took away the number of drinks per day
Mm,
guidance. That happened about a month ago. And I was hoping for the opposite. I was hoping for them to come out like Canada did and say, no, like, really, you have to stop drinking. And that messaging wasn't there. But I do think as people start to catch on to this, and as you see non-alcoholic brands like Athletic on the, tap options, people are gonna start to be more accepting of it and do a little more research, and I think there will be a shift, but I think it's still gonna take some time. And
interesting.
that's what really bothers me because there's no excuse for it to be taking time now.
Hmm.
It's like we know. And it's so hard because everybody has that fallback, especially my teenagers. Oh, well, everything causes cancer. So, whatever. You can't even go outside. Like I'm drinking anyway. But when you
Yeah.
really just pay attention for a little bit about, and you look at how it causes cancer. It's really hard to undo that in your head because you're disabling your immune system to be that army that is tackling the cancer before it becomes a problem. Like, why would you want to do that? It's like once you learn the science, it's very hard to then continue to drink. So I just really hope that education gets out through conversations like this, through books that are coming out, through the brands that are in this space. I mean, we have thousands of brands now in this space that are non-alcoholic adult beverages. It's not mocktails anymore. And as
Well,
as those become available, things are going to change, I think.
yeah.
I hope.
And it's also hugely lucrative, right? Like, you talk about the success of Athletic.
Mhm.
They had Super Bowl spots this year. They're punching at the same level as major independent breweries. They just opened their West Coast facility here in San Diego. But then you have Heineken. Heineken brought their non-alcoholic option into the market a few years ago, and they took 5% market share for the entire country. I mean, I feel like all the big brands are paying attention at this point. You go to the non-alcoholic section of total beverages or wine.com or whatever, or Bevmo, and it's like, it used to be like one little shelf, and now it's like almost like a half aisle, maybe an entire aisle if you added it up: spirits, wine, and non-alcoholic beer.
Right.
um, you know and then also, I think, like, the idea, you talked about this idea of, like, Gen Z prioritizing recovery and performance and meaningful social rituals. So I think also young people are figuring out different ways to connect with each other and have social experiences that don't require, like, the social lubrication that alcohol provided, at least for me, like during my younger years and my fraternity years and my partying
Yeah.
years. But I'll give you an example. So yesterday it was 80 degrees here in San Diego, so I couldn't work out anywhere because gyms are closed on the
Right.
weekends. And I went for a stand-up paddle on the ocean for about an hour, and then when I was done, I was like, you know what? I've got some free time. I want to go, like, get a massage, and I want to do, like, a sauna and a cold plunge. So I have memberships at a couple places that provide for that. And Sunday night at Breathe Degrees Cold Plunge in San Diego, I kid you not, like, the sauna was so busy you could barely fit in there. The cold plunge tubs, which normally fit like 10 people, the jacuzzi where you do the warm up from the cold plunge, and the breathwork class Sunday night was oversold by 3 people. I couldn't even get in. It was crazy. And when I walk in, it's like, yeah, there's like good diversity of ages, but it's a lot of young people.
Yeah.
It seemed like something was happening where there was a group of young people there that were, like, all part of something. I don't know if it was like a company retreat or like an Instagram meetup or what, but they were, like, together. So, do you want to talk a little bit about like how Gen Z is finding alternative modalities of like connection and social experience, and yeah, this idea of recovery and performance? Like everybody's on the 145-year lifespan train now, I feel like too.
Yeah, there is a positive Gen Z story. I am a little worried that the media, the way we're reporting it, is it's too positive. So,
Mm.
there's a post that you'll see it on a lot of people's accounts now. It's the same line about how the alcohol industry lost all of this money because Gen Z isn't drinking. And I reposted that on my Temperates TikTok. It got 5 million views. It was the most viral post, and I just started this TikTok.
Holy cow.
And you know, it was a little discouraging because a lot of the comments said, "That's because we're smoking weed," or that the reason is because it's too
Mm.
expensive. So, while I am excited, and I believe there is a segment of Gen Z that is doing this alternative options thing for health reasons, and they are, and I'll get into that because I have my own kids who are even in that demo that are doing that. They are also they are using THC instead, much more than I think we did. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But they are doing things that weren't even available to us when we were their age. I mean, I see them doing a lot of working out together, group fitness. That's not something, I mean, maybe we did sports, people played outside, but there are theater themed cycling spin classes that my daughter goes to with her friends. There are pickleball clubs. There are so many different things now that they do, and drinking has not been part of that. Um, and I think that because more there are so many more options for them to communicate with each other and coordinate things through their phones and through social media, that it's just naturally going that way, that they have more to do that's not focused around drinking, which is fantastic. But at the same time, there's still the stigma of being a non-drinker, even in Gen Z. And I still am seeing kids drinking because they don't want to be the one who's not drinking. They don't want to be the weird one. They don't want to be judged. And we have to really we as Gen Xers and as the parents of this generation, we really need to try to do everything we can to re-educate them and to combat these messages that they're receiving so that they know that it doesn't mean anything negative about them if they choose to not drink. It doesn't mean anything negative if they choose to not smoke. So there were there were like 10,000 responses on that post, but a lot of them, like I said, were blaming finances or pot. So I hope that Gen Z does continue to not spend on alcohol, but I hope it's not because they are spending it on marijuana instead.
Yeah, that's funny. I
you know,
mean,
and then there's the whole THC beverages part, right?
yeah.
So how does that fit into it? And we're really getting into a dangerous place here with the cannabis because you're seeing a lot of increased incidences of cannabis induced psychosis. A lot of these kids are having way too much cannabis and it's really causing major problems. So we have to be careful. But back to what you were saying, yes, there is a segment of that generation that is doing what you're saying, going to cold plunges and going to, like I said, spin classes. And I think that's really great. And I think it should be celebrated. And I think it should be covered more in the media so that, again, it doesn't look like you're different if you don't partake in drinking alcohol.
I love it. The THC thing is interesting too, right? Because you've got this explosion of THC brands and THC marketing, and the costs have gone from like, I guess it was $20 a gram when I was growing up. I'm sure I don't know that for any particular reason. And then now, you drive around Portland and you see $5 gram billboards, which is
Right.
wild to me. But then the other thing is like the application, right? So beverage makes it less stigmatic. It's less of like that like seedy ritual where you go like burn flour and turn it into smoke, and the harshness of hitting bongs and smoking water pipes and stuff like that. You can just sip on a drink. And then you've also got the issue around potency. So now when you kind of, melt this stuff down to oil, it's like 100% potency
Right.
versus,
So really dangerous. Really dangerous.
yeah. And, and then I know that you mentioned the case of psychosis up. There's a mental health crisis. A lot of
Yep.
this coincides with legalization, national or state by state legalization. Um, you know, in general, do you think legalization and kind of the branding of THC, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, the other thing is that it also intermingles organized crime. Like everybody thought, oh, the cartels will go away because we legalize marijuana. Well,
Right.
they actually become more emboldened and they become bigger operators because now the penalties are lower and they can kind of like, kind of like blend in with the gray market, so to speak.
Yep.
So I'd be curious of your overall thoughts. Legalization, good or bad?
I think it's dangerous. I think it needs more oversight. I know that kids that are 19 can get a medical card with very little oversight. So I think it needs to be tightened up where it's a doctor who's been seeing that patient for 6 months that knows what their background is, that has, previous substance use disorder information. But right now that's not what's happening. Like anybody, like in Massachusetts, for example, can just go get a med card from a doctor online very easily. And that's where it can get really dangerous because there are so many different forms of THC now. And if they do overdo it, they're going to be in a serious medical state. So I'm worried about that. And really, what I hope is that we, the Gen Xers and the millennials, can educate ourselves enough to know that we should be helping these kids realize they don't need either. You don't need to be smoking. You don't need to be eating gummies. You don't need to be drinking alcohol. You can be happy without these things. You can have fun without these things. You don't need a vice. If you want one once in a while, that's okay. But to be doing these things multiple times a week isn't good for anyone, whether it's alcohol or THC. So I'm hoping that we can teach them that and that things will start to shift. We really made a huge difference in our house. We don't drink in front of them anymore. It's
Mm.
extremely rare. I saw a viral video that I think Grok or Chat said wasn't really true. The statistic wasn't true, but I'm going to say it anyway. It said that parents who drink in front of their kids are 500 times more likely to have some kind of alcohol use disorder. And I said,
Wow.
500 times, that seems, and it said, no, that's not really right. It's not 500 times. But I do believe that it has influence. We drank in front of the kids for most of their lives. And now they think it's totally normal and fine to drink. And I don't want them to think that. So now I've been doing damage control. So if you're anybody out there watching this and you have really young kids, like just consider not drinking in front of them or trying to reduce it so that it doesn't just look like it's a totally normal part of adulthood because we're already fighting all of the branding and the entertainment industry and the media. We can at least try to offset that by being a better example. I went to a football game at IU with one of my sons, and the entire stadium is Coors Light branded. And the out of home boards around the stadium are that, Coors Light is the official sponsor of IU athletics. And you can't really walk in there without thinking, well, I need a Coors Light, And these kids aren't even 21 yet. You're at a college campus. A lot of the students aren't even 21 yet. But if you really want to be a part of this game, you want to have a Coors Light. And that's what we're fighting. We're fighting that constant bombardment. There was no good non-alcoholic option at that game. I looked everywhere for something, and I would take anything. There was nothing but diet soda, and that's not good for us either. So, it's just we need to start providing alternatives and make it okay. And when you talked about the Super Bowl ads, did you catch the Michelob Ultra ending?
No,
Because
I did see. Well, I know the Michelob Ultra non-alcoholic that's been a great addition to my repertoire too. But what? No,
so they
remind me.
well, first of all, they have an out of home campaign going that I've seen at the Garden and I've seen it in LA. They have a Michelob Ultra Zero campaign going on, which I love because you really don't see that a lot. But what they did with their Super Bowl spot, first of all, Kurt Russell was playing like the smart guy. If you remember, he was like teaching the other guy how to not have to pay for the round by being a better skier. He was the older, wiser character of the spot. And right at the very end of the spot, they showed his glass and he was drinking zero. So they had, even though it was mostly an ultra spot, they had the smartest person in the spot. The smartest character in the spot was drinking the non-alc. And I
Interesting.
just fell in love with that because they were able to cover both the non-alc and their regular brand. But that message was like stronger than most people realize because that's who was drinking the non-alc, you
Yep.
know?
I
So
love
I
that.
love it. And I really hope that more brands do that. I know Modelo just came out with a non-alc. You know, you talked about Heineken Zero. The big brands have to come in because otherwise they're just leaving all of that share of wallet right wide open for all of the smaller brands. And you know they don't want to do that and have all of that money taken over. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
Well, the other thing that's so fun with non-alc is the guilt-free association. So like me and my wife used to like laugh where we'd be like driving down the road on a road trip in our RV, and it would be like lunchtime, or like, oh, let's crack a non-alcoholic beer with lunch. And it's like totally like it's just hot as hell out, in the
Yep.
RV. We're having a salad, looking at the side of the road of some farm, and we're just like, oh yeah, we can totally like day drink and like dry and then get right back behind the wheel and continue our day. It's like not even a factor.
I know. I love
So
that too. You
yeah,
know,
and then in the summer, like we'll have three non-alcs each, over the evening, or like a couple glasses of wine, and it's like I think my consumption is probably higher. I mean, except like when I was like on a bender, like really getting after it and partying, like
yep.
like, but my day to day non-alc consumption is way above and beyond, what I used to drink. Like I was more of a binge drinker. I'd go nothing, 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 and then 20.
Oof.
you know?
That must have been
But
quite the hangover.
yeah, for sure.
I totally agree. We drink all day also, and it's really
Yep.
fun because you can have, like you said, non-alcoholic beer all day long, and it really doesn't make much of an impact. And they're lower calorie too, so you're not even piling on calories. You know, one of the other issues with some of the IPAs, the alcoholic IPAs, is they're 250 calories a can.
Holy cow.
And that's how I got started on this because I was like, oh boy, I can't do 250 calories a can. I need to find a diet beer, you know? So that's what happened. And I ended up finding out that alcohol is terrible, but wasn't planning to find that out. That wasn't my goal. My goal was calorie reduction. But like you said, it's really great to be able to drink all day and have no guilt. The issue is some people don't drink for that reason. So I think you and I are in the same boat. We love cracking open the can. We love having it
Mhm.
in our hand. We love having a beer, just the experience of it. We're doing it
Yep.
for that. We love how it tastes. We're not doing it necessarily to get drunk or get buzzed. We don't want that part or need that part. So if you're in that, like I love the ritual group, non-alcoholic beverages are going to be great for you. But if you're the kind of drinker that is drinking for some other reason, like you think you need it to take the edge off of your stress, or you are doing it because you want to get, effed up, for lack of a better word, then that's the group that says, what is the point of these non-alcoholic beers? They're so stupid, you know? So, but I think the older that we get, the more likely we are to be in that in the group that you and I are in. You know, there's also the kind of drinker who just loves to drink with a meal, right? You want to have
Yeah.
something that enhances your meal. And that's the kind of time where I would say maybe I will have some wine, right? Maybe it is worth it if it's this amazing pairing that the chef is recommending, but it has to really make sense for me to have that alcohol now.
Yeah, it's a bummer that the wine category just can't quite get there from a
It's so
user.
hard. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
hard.
it's I don't think it's possible chemically. I mean, who knows? Maybe science will, figure it out at some point, but I'll still drink non-alc reds in the winter because it's kind
Mhm.
of hard to drink like a cold beer in the cold.
Yep.
And then the spirits category does pretty good. Like I've got some bourbon right now that, like, when I was feeling sick, I had a little bit of a cold during the holidays, and I tried to drink some of the non-alc bourbon just straight, and like I took a shot equivalent of it, maybe like a little snifter pour, and I like started coughing because it was like the kind of whatever they use to synthesize that experience of bourbon is pretty damn, on the money. I maybe just even using the barrels or something like
Yeah, I
that.
have not found a bourbon that I love. There
Yeah.
are some spirits. Pathfinder is amazing. There are some
Mm,
spirits that aren't trying to be something else, and I think that's really where the magic is for the spirits. When they're trying to copy, like vodka is a disaster. I haven't found anything even close to vodka. I tried to make it at home myself with potato water, but I failed.
interesting.
Ghost pepper and potato water. Don't try it.
Wow.
But the spirits that are just making their own thing are really interesting and elevated and adult
Mm,
and good. So it doesn't have to be a copycat. There are other drinks coming into the space that are really enjoyable. And
I
then
like
there's the
that.
whole functional beverage piece that we haven't really talked about. Some of these drinks still claim to have not sedating effects, but things that are good for you. Adaptogens, nootropics, there are all these buzzwords now, and I was watching another podcast about how they're not really being used properly, which is fine. And I don't think they really need to be. I don't think like the average customer needs to know every single term and what it means and what ingredients fall under each category. I think as long as you know that you are choosing something better for yourself, that's all that you really need to know.
Yeah, totally. I haven't really felt any effects from like the kavas of the world or the ones that are like kava mixtures or whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, they're good drinks, but they're just like nothing quite synthesizes that, out of control feeling of alcohol. But I think that's the point,
It
it's
might
like,
be the placebo effect. I mean,
yeah.
you have Curious, and they have a
Mhm.
lot of amazing ingredients in their
Oh,
varieties.
interesting.
And Curious Elixirs, they have really good stuff, and I do feel like I had a nice drink after I have one of those.
Oh,
So,
that's
I don't
cool.
know, it could be the placebo effect, but it's better than no effect.
Totally. So, you mentioned the stigma. I've been hearing some reverse stigmas coming out of Silicon Valley, at least. There's becoming a stigma in Silicon Valley that if you drink, you have nothing to do the next day, and you're like not a hustler, and you don't have what it takes to be a startup entrepreneur.
Whoa.
I don't know if you've been tracking that conversation at all, but I'd be curious. Like, do you think Silicon Valley sometimes seems like it's this place of like, like trends often will start within that community, whether it's like meal replacements or like, productivity tools or work hat. Obviously, it's the seed of technology and, the deployment of most venture capital still even in a flatter world these days. So be curious, do you think Silicon Valley might be something that kind of helps mainstream the trend of like, oh, like drinking basically means like you're not planning on being productive tomorrow.
I haven't heard about that, so I'm not gonna pretend that I do know about it, but I will say that I think that that can't be universal across everybody, right? That's gotta be just specific people's opinions. So, if they're judging that harshly, good. It only helps the conversation move people to drinking less, which is really what, at the end of the day, I'm after. If people are worried about being judged that they will be, considered not a strong enough entrepreneur, I mean, they could just say they're drinking Modelo, and then they could offset that, right? Because Modelo's whole message is that that is for the entrepreneurs and that they have the fighting spirit. So they can get away with it by saying, "Oh no, I'm drinking Modelo, so I'm all in." But that's for the really hard workers, that brand. Um, I don't know. I think that they should continue that. I think it's helpful for the overall movement. Like I said, to drinking less.
Yeah, I love it. I think something that maybe occasionally will get missed is the idea of like, so the word spirits comes from spirituality, right?
Mhm.
The idea originally of spirits in, ancient religious texts is that spirits were a shortcut to a relationship with your higher power. Essentially, it
Yeah.
was like you want to get, you want that connection, that direct connection to, the other dimension. You're going to use spirits to get there. And then the other thing that I find, you talked about kind of the, the THC thing, but in corporate America and in these wellness communities, when I go into the sauna, a lot of conversations that I'm hearing is around like drug deals for mushrooms and like, like psychedelics that I've never heard of when I was, in the scene. And it's very common for me to run into tech executives, entrepreneurs, people from my kind of like world who have just gone, off the grid on some like sabbatical and like smoked DMT or taken ayahuasca. What are your thoughts on kind of this larger, shortcut to spirituality and some of these even more hardcore modalities of like basically psychedelics, kind of, reprogramming people's brains, giving them an insight into like who they really are. I know there's been a lot of stuff around the treatment of PTSD and like some positive developments maybe, but be curious, what your thoughts are around this larger like psychedelics movement.
I think that it just really needs to be supervised. I think I believe that there could be some real progress there, and I know RFK is also supporting that, and I believe that if we can have some breakthroughs around helping people, like you said, rewire the way their brain's working to alleviate anxiety and depression and other mental health issues, I think that's an amazing positive thing. But the worry is that people are doing that without the correct supervision. I mean, I know 2 cases of it personally where
Mm.
Gen Z, again, have used these products without the proper supervision, believing that it can do some really amazing thing for them, and then they've gotten themselves into the hospital. So we just have to, again, it's more about education around all of these things. And there's so much online that everyone has access to now. I don't really know what the answer is to, wrangling it all in so that the messaging is safe and accurate for people to make good decisions for themselves. I know people have had very positive experiences with it. And again, I think that it could be really good, but we just have to be careful on the access and how it's used.
What do you
I
think
am,
about, oh, go ahead.
I'm worried because there are products, I think it's pronounced kratom or kratom, but there are products
Mhm.
out there now that are dangerous when overused, and they're available, at bodegas. So it's a mixed bag right now, and it needs to be more organized, I think.
What about
Not
spirituality?
necessarily not necessarily more regulated, but just the communication around it needs to be more specific and more organized.
What about spirituality? Do you think, one of the reasons that we've had an explosion of all these, different ways to get to spirituality is because as a culture throughout the years, we've drifted farther away from real connections to spirituality in some way, whether that is, whatever your spirituality, of choice is your business with your higher power.
Right.
But do you think the average, American consumer, gives much time thinking about their spirituality?
It's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I hope so. I hope that people are looking for evidence of a higher power. I know I've seen evidence of a higher power, but it really takes a personal experience. If you're
Mm.
a non-believer, no alcohol or drug, or I don't believe any of that is really going to make you start having a better relationship with your own spirituality. I think that you have to have something happen that makes you believe that the higher power is there. And I hope for everyone that they're able to have that happen and that they can see that. I think it's really important for people to believe that there's more than just this. So I hope that we don't have to tie using any kind of drug into getting to that for ourselves.
Oh, something happened
You
with
got
my,
blurry.
let's
Not
see.
me.
Come on, come on. All right. Okay, well, that was a great background. We spent 38 minutes just
Ooh.
talking about concepts and, really the movement, I think, kind of at large. And I think probably, because you and I have a depth of experience in this, it made sense for us to kind of start there. But I want to get into, your work with intemperance.com and really talk about the business model of how you're taking these ideas and turning them into business. So let's talk a little bit about dry January. I know you and I have talked a little bit about, the framing of like a curiosity experiment. rather than like this, this gauntlet that people try and push themselves through. And like,
Right.
to like people talk about dry January as if they just went through like training for the Ironman or something like that. It's and it seems like this dry January was kind of, I feel like this is the first dry January where people are like, you know what? Not dry January, like dry life, or like, let's talk about this outside of the context of like a New Year's ritual, getting back to the gym, and then it's just something that you drop off, after January is over. Be curious, if you could talk a little bit about the idea of dry January and your thinks about it.
Sure. You got blurry again. Oh, you're back.
Oh,
You're back.
back. There we
Now you're
go.
back. Yeah. I just said it and it fixed it.
Don't
See, there's the
don't
higher
don't
power right there.
don't wear pink. Don't wear pink in interviews anymore. Note to self.
So, okay, that was two questions in one, but I'll talk about dry January first. So, I don't know
Cool.
if you noticed this, but there was a lot of hate on dry January this year.
Hmm.
And I don't really get why when we're trying so hard to move people away from drinking. Dry January is the perfect, entrance point because everybody knows, or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people know about dry January already. I think the problem is that they don't know really why they're doing it. It's just, oh, you know what? I drank a lot over the holidays. I should probably cut back. But they don't do that second piece of really, why am I doing this? And that's why people fail and they go back early and start drinking again and say, oh, yeah, I failed, or now I'm doing damp January because I had a drink, right? Whatever. But I think that dry January is great. I think we should be capitalizing on it because it's a great way to bring people into drinking less. And again, it's not just about making everybody drink never, but it's drinking with intention, drinking with full awareness, drinking knowing why you're drinking and what it means for you and your body, and then choosing that powerfully and being okay with yourself for it. And I don't think a lot of people that drink are doing all of those steps. They're just drinking because they're drinking on autopilot. Like, oh, it's football, where's my beer? And there's, they haven't put this thought into it. And if we can use dry January more, I think that it would help a lot to get more people into considering changing their drinking habits. There's also a lot of other things out there, like apps that help you track now. There are things that weren't available years ago where people can really start to take ownership of their relationship with alcohol by using all of these tools. There's supplements, there's, like I said, there's apps, there's books, there's brands online. So there's ways to do it. It's just being willing to start is really what people need. They need to get to that point. So dry January is perfect for that because it's already sort of a socially acceptable thing. I think one of the most challenging things is, what are people going to think if I don't drink, is one of the most challenging things for people when they're considering doing this. And they do think things. I have my own friends and family still making comments, and I have a brand, or they know that I wrote a book on this, and they're like, "You're not drinking a real Bloody Mary? Like, what's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I just want a virgin Bloody Mary. I don't want vodka right now." But like, they can't get it. So I love dry January, and I love that the restaurants. I was at a place in Verona, and they had this beautiful dry January menu, and it was really elevated. They didn't just say, here's some cranberry and seltzer with lime. They had seedlip, they had spirits, they had, curated drinks. Like, it was really nice. So I think we need that partnership with the venues, not just restaurants and bars, but all of the venues, to make adult drinking accessible, like adult drinking non-alc accessible. Because right now it's just too hard in a lot of places to get it. Even if it is dry January, it's too hard. Some places don't do it, or they haven't changed their menu. And then they'll come and say, what are you drinking? And it's like, well, it's dry January, and I brought my own non-alcoholic beer. But, maybe we can get to a place where it's the default that those non-alcoholic beverages are offered, especially in January. That would be really helpful.
That is cool. So talk about Intemperance as a business. Do you see it as a media brand? Is it you as a thought leader and influencer creator? A little bit of both. What is the vision and how do you monetize?
So it's temperates.com. I know people
Temperates.
that's
Yep.
okay. People confuse it with temperance, but it's temperate is in moderation, right? Like I said, this
Yes.
is not about everyone should go sober. It is about, maybe you would go sober if you did do a deep dive into this and decided that that was the right decision for you. But it's not, oh, sober girl, or, I think everybody should be sober and listen to me talk about why it's important to be sober. That's not really my lane. I just want everyone to really see everything. Like, you can't watch a show. Like, I have a whole article about Love is Blind. Have you watched Love is Blind?
No, I'm not much of a reality show person these days unless it's travel.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really a Love is Blind watcher either, but my cousin showed me an episode and I kind of got hooked. But every single episode is glamorizing alcohol. And
Huh.
there was even a story about there was one participant on the show that didn't drink, and the producers were trying to get him to drink on screen just to continue the story about how alcohol is so instrumental in relationships, and it's not. So, it's very hard to watch these things and not say anything. So the brand is really to offset the marketing and the media and the entertainment industry, and to call it out and to say, look at what is happening here. Be aware of what's going on. You don't have to change anything, but just, understand what I'm talking about in my book. Understand for yourself why you drink. Understand what the research says right now about how bad it is, and then decide if you still want to drink as much as you're drinking. That's what I want. I want people to just make that choice for themselves after they've had the curtain pulled back, because most people haven't had the curtain pulled back, or they don't want it pulled back because they're upset to consider that maybe they have to stop drinking, because it does suck when you first have to make that decision for yourself. Like, if you love your drinks like I did, I didn't want to not have my bourbon and my wine, and I have a wine cellar in my house. Now what do I what do I do with all this wine? And I don't even want to give it away to people because I feel like, now I'm just returning it to Total Wine and then getting a bunch of NAs with each bottle.
Oh, I love it. I know. I have a cigar cabinet over there that I barely smoke cigars in anymore, and
Yeah,
I've got a whole collection of alcohol out in the backyard of people who give me gifts, and then I'll just take it out for parties and
right.
stuff like that. But
So,
yeah,
first, Temperates is a content brand, and I hope that I can get some readership and an audience. I'm looking to just really be able to call out what I see and have a place to do that. So, I called out Landman. I mean, that show is amazing, right? It's a really good show, but you can't not drink on that show. I mean,
mm-mm.
even if you watch that, even the old age home scene, I mean, it was like the nurse came in and said, they can't drink, they're on medications, it could kill them. And she was the one being made to look like the fool for saying that, because of course they should be drinking or they won't be able to have any fun. And that's the kind of messaging that is just constant around our kids and around us. So when you start to see it everywhere, you can't unsee it. And I want to help everyone see it. And then if they still want to drink after that, great. But at least you now know what's going on. So I have essays, I have posts, I have my book. And then, I did think about some merch and I want to have some branded merch and some things just to be a part of this movement of, you don't have to have alcohol use disorder to drink less. You just have to
Yeah.
choose to drink less. That's it.
Yeah, it's funny. You talked about Landman. One of my favorite integrations actually in that show is when he's like, "Oh, I'll get Michelob. I'm an
Yeah.
alcoholic."
Right. He said he's not drinking, so he's going to drink a Michelob Ultra. Yeah.
Exactly. And trust me, I tried the experiment of only drinking light beer, and you could definitely get drunk on Michelob or whatever. Choose your light beer of choice. You can get drunk if
Charlie
you drink
Sheen does
enough
that
of
on 2.5 Men also. He says he's not drinking and then he only drinks the light beers or the
it.
beers
So,
because that
so
doesn't
good.
count. But it does count. So I just I can't be silent. I really want this message out. Like I said, I feel like compelled to go stand in the middle of a car show telling everybody about it. So I had to just launch this because it was just part of who I wanted to be right now and how I wanted to show up for my peers, for my family, and for my kids. Really, having 4 kids about to turn 21 really motivated me here because, some of them do drink and I don't love it. So I have to try to do some damage control, like I said, and show them that it's okay to not drink regularly.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, I definitely had reservations over the years of interviewing non-alcoholic alcohol founders. Like you talked about Partake. I've interviewed Ted on the show.
Mhm.
My friend Molly started the wine brand Buzzkill.
Yep.
And, I actually do go out of my way to interview people from the non-alc category because I'm excited about it as a consumer. But yeah, at the end of the day, I, like you, worked on enough alcohol brands over my life that, I don't like, I'm very much of the position of like, hey, like, everything in moderation, everything is, you have agency and you have choice and you have to make the best decision that you can make for yourself. But we also have to realize that there are, lots of forces and lots of forces that I've even played a part in over my career, applied in getting the messaging out there around stuff. So I think, anything I can do to pitch in a small amount of awareness through my show to,
Yeah.
help elevate founders like yourself and the great founders that are creating these amazing experiences that have really great user experience and really great, health benefits of consumption. So I appreciate the passion and I share it with you, wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Sounds like
So
you and I are coming from the same place on this.
yeah, I think so. I think it's like, if you use your superpower for bad and then you realize you're a bad guy, you got to use your superpower for good at some point, right?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So good. All right. So, I think that's probably a pretty good place to wrap it up. I think if folks want to check out the book or spend some time at temperate.com. I got it right this time, right?
Temperates.com. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, and then I think obviously if folks want to read the book and hear a little bit about your personal journey, that's probably a good place to spend some time as well. But anything
Yep.
else you want to get out there and share with the audience or direct them
Sure.
to?
Well, the book will be out on Amazon and available for purchase in about a month. You can read the intro and the free first chapter free preview on the site now, and just sign up for the newsletter, and then we can let you know when the book's available. But I really love talking to you, Dylan. I think this was really cool, and I hope that we can, even if we just help a few people start to look a little more into this, it really is life changing. And you know this from being sober for, you said,
Hmm.
11 years, right? When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do walk away from drinking regularly, it's such a difference. It really is such a difference in your body that it's hard to ignore also.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about knowing, it's about feeling it.
Hmm. When you made yourself throw up on a regular occasion, and then you rarely throw up except certain times when you're actually ill, it's like, how did I ever do that? It's so crazy. Now I'm like the biggest man baby whenever I get sick, and my wife's like, because like if I'm off in any little way, I totally feel it. So.
Right.
All right, Tara, thank you so much for spending some time with the audience today.
Sure.
Keep doing the good work. And then, of course, we want to support those awesome brands that you're putting out into the world that are cool counterbalances to some of the things that we talked about today. And for
Yep.
those of you who are watching at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a subscribe or a follow. And if you are listening to the podcast, an honest review on whatever podcast platform you might be listening on is how we find a larger audience organically. And if there is somebody out there in your life who is a regular alcohol user and they might want to get educated, or maybe a reformed brand marketer who once worked on alcohol business and wants to figure out how they can maybe get involved in the good fight to countermeasure some of that some of that stuff that you put out into the world. Or if you just think somebody who would benefit from the conversation that I had with Tara today, maybe a mom or a dad of a young person going into the drinking world in short order, don't forget to share the show. And with that, Tara, I will wish you a great day and have an amazing week and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Dylan. You too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Bye.